Hey guys, it's GameLordS. So I'm gonna be doing a little storytelling. So uh, I have this entire thing set up. I have a little campfire and stuff like that. So I'm gonna be reading off my character's backstory from Discord, and so it's basically like my character's origin story. Also, this lag. Hang on. Okay. So let's start from. So yeah, grab your popcorn, grab your drink, because we're gonna be here a while. Okay, and this is background and information first. 924 years ago, in a separate dimension and universe, there was a planet. This planet, Zarok, was plentiful and abundant of crops, minerals, and materials. Every person there, great or small, rich or poor, had special powers. They looked like humans, spoke like humans, and acted mainly like humans, though they had special powers and quirks that made them unique. One quirk they had was the fact that their eye color changed every time they felt a certain emotion. Two girls there, twin sisters in fact, had eyes opposite of each other. Every time they felt anger, their eyes changed. Violet, the youngest of the two, her eyes changed to a pitch black every time she got angry, while Vallory, the eldest, her eyes turned a pure white when she got angry. The sisters' powers were also opposite of each other. While Violet's power was of colder temperatures, Vi- sorry, Valorie's was of warmer temperatures. These sisters embark on an emotional journey that leads one questioning her role. The planet was under attack to begin with, and 1 year into our lives led to an emotional roller coaster. I remember flashes of every shade of red and orange. Dull grays and blacks filled the sky with smoke. The stars grew dim as it spread. I heard the quiet rivers through all the screams and terrors, gently swaying at its own pace. The prickly woven basket I was held in started rocking back and forth to the currents. I sensed my sister's presence as we were sent down the river together. One hard-hitting scream left me to realize that my own mother was in peril. The scream turned into labored breathing, and then silence. I only saw the top of the basket, but I heard everything. My mother's death, my sister's cries, and my heart pounding furiously within my chest. I felt a rock spin me around as I started to lose sense of my sister's presence. I couldn't hear her cries. I couldn't hear her heart beating. I couldn't hear anything except the footsteps of a stranger. I sensed their presence arriving from my mother's deathbed. I could barely control my emotions and my powers. I threw up my hands up to the top of the basket and out flew bright flames, illuminating the inside of the basket. The lid was set aflame and burnt to a crisp as it flew out of my way. I could see. The stars were burning bright above me, with smoke covering up every corner of my vision. The soft waves of the river fell quiet as I was picked up out of the basket. Rough hands handled my tiny body and head. My vision was hazy as I knew that my anger was rushing through my veins. I saw a face, tanned and scarred. Hazelnut hair brushed his forehead, and I stared into the same white eyes as mine. The corners of his mouth twitched into a slight smile, and just for a second, I felt warmth throughout my body which caused my eyes to turn back to normal. He's handling me with such care. Was this not the person who killed my mother? His smile faded and his stare turned empty and cold. It sent chills down my spine until he took action. He wrapped me in a blanket found in the basket, held me carefully in his right arm, and raced to some sort of flying vessel. Metallic and dull, I couldn't see the stars anymore. My vision was consisted only of these hybrid pig zombies and the man who took me from the basket. I turned my head to the front of the ship to see flashing lights pass us by. We were leaving my home planet. These pigman creatures looked at me with such confusion, or at least I think it was confusion. I blocked out every conversation they had and thought, what has my life come to? Why am I letting this man take me to who knows where? Who is this man who took me from the basket and killed my mother? How are his eyes still white? Where was he taking me? When will I ever return to my home planet? There was so little I knew about this situation, but my thoughts were cut short by the grunt of a single pigman in the back who faced the door. One by one, each pigman faced the door until it opened. Splashes of dark reds and orange filled the air with ominous vibes. Each pigman rushed out, the man yelling at them to get back to work. His voice was like thunder, crashing against my fragile ears, but I did not cry. My eyes were filled with wonder and curiosity to this new situation. The man carried me out of the vessel. Dark red stones, lava, magma, and dull crimson sky were the only things I saw. I inhaled the carbon dioxide from each breath of smoke. Oxygen was sparse here, and the smell was not so pleasant. We traveled through the far lands of this hellish place and arrived at a building entirely made of white rock and crimson bricks. Bright lights blinded my vision, if only for a second. I saw black skeletons roam around the place with white coats on. There were cells reaching to the ceiling with plenty of room, each having their own habitat and their own creature-looking person. These people were either fearful, aggressive, or insane. I was taken across the room to a separate office. Their cries and agonizing screams were muffled as the door was closed. I heard talk from the man and a skeleton talking about me. This went on for some time as I realized that they were figuring out what to do with me. Finally, the skeleton took me from the man's arms and carried me to a separate room. I looked back at the man, who glanced at me one last time before leaving the room. I was placed in a small bed where my blanket was taken from me. Skeletons started surrounding me, writing on clipboards, poking and prodding me. I was extremely uncomfortable. The next thing I knew was that I had fallen asleep, unaware of what was happening to me. I heard the chattering of each skeleton quiet down in silence. I heard footsteps retreat from where I rested. My senses returned as I woke, and my vision was blurred. As it cleared, I noticed the man hovering over me, staring blankly at me with the same dull and empty eyes. He picked me up and set me into this tube-type structure. There was a cushion behind me which I rested my head upon, and it sunk me halfway into it as if holding me in place while I rested. Time passed. I started aging, and I became less resentful of my condition. I started to make friends with these skeletons and pigmen as I was learning and growing, yet these powers I possessed grew stronger as well. My adoptive father, Herobrine, as his name is, grew fond of my power, though he doesn't treat me as his daughter, but more as a servant. I didn't mind the work, seeing as I at least had food, water, and a bed to sleep in, or something like a bed. I was happy in the midst of all this darkness. I had been training my power, fighting, and academic skills since I was no more than 3. Tests were taken on me, and eventually I grew up and turned 15. At this point I considered Herobrine to be my father. Even if I knew he adopted me, he still raised me and trained me. Though the skeletons fed me, taught me the basic things a human would need to know, and took care of me. My 16th birthday came around, but the only gift I ever got was an experiment. I was led into a lab where test equipment was held. A glass cage held a captive phoenix, with wires and tubes poking out of it. Its blood was taken and put into the side of a circular chamber with multiple syringes and a single chest brace. I was strapped into the circular chamber and my top was taken off temporarily. Multiple black skeletons were around the room, I could tell they were all female, as they talked and nodded to each other. They each pulled levers simultaneously, and the chamber was activated. All at once, two glass half-spheres closed around me, and the chest brace closed against my heart. The phoenix blood in each syringe were injected into my bloodstream. My heart stung as the phoenix blood was changing all of my blood to that of a phoenix. My veins started glowing and burning. It felt like fire was starting in my body, eating me from the inside out. I screamed in agony for the pain to stop, but it got worse. No matter how hard I tried, the pain just wouldn't go away. Whimpering and groaning inside of the glass sphere, I felt the pain once it had gone to my toes spread to my back. Almost melting, the blazing pain had revolved around my back as I started to calm down. My eyes were starting to close. My heartbeat slowed. I only felt immense pain, and it started to fade as I closed my eyes. I realized, why are you letting yourself die? You were born in pain. You won't die just yet. Not yet. My eyes opened. I could feel the pain reoccurring. But I was alive. What am I accomplishing by doing this? Why am I doing this for them? What do they mean to me? As I opened my eyes and breathed again, the skeletons were amazed and in awe. I was barely standing, though the circulation was cutting off in my wrists. I could feel the burning flow through my veins once more. I exhaled once more and managed to calm down. The beeping of a heart monitor was the only thing I heard loud enough over the ringing in my ears. It felt like I just survived from an explosion. As soon as I was let out of the circular sphere, the skeletons unstrapped me from the machine and carried me to a large table. A single tear from my cheek fell as I was breathing heavily. I knew that I had barely escaped death just by the power of will. Everything hurt. My bones felt like they were breaking and being put back together again, growing, burning, screaming, surviving. I was put in a cell, same as every creature here. I was turning into one of them. I had nothing in the cell, so over the course of 3 weeks I built a hellish place just like the outside area, which I now know to be the nether. My black tank top was ripping over my tube, small feathery bones growing from my back. They were uncomfortable at first, but eventually grew out to be two small crimson wings on my back just between my shoulder blades. They still hurt. Soon enough, my feet were off the ground. This hellish habitat I was kept in abided and formed to my will. Ledges and platforms broke off to help me fly. Outside of this lab, my powers are limitless, but I cannot escape this cell. What would I do if I escaped? This is my life now. I cannot escape from this. A few days passed as I got used to what I've become. There was a viewing window on the side of my cell which the scientists could see me through, so I blocked it with smoke. One day a single scientist came in to check on me. I was guessing they sent her to see if I was still alive. I was sitting on a floating ledge, sticking my feet out and staring down at the lava lake I had created. I heard the scientist's voice call out to see if I would answer. My heart started racing. They never checked on me in a while, so I answered. What is my purpose? When the scientist didn't answer, I stood up, turned around, and jumped in front of her and lashed out. What reason did you have to make me into this monster? When she whimpered and cowered in the corner out of fear, I remembered Herobrine yelling at the pigmen to get back to work. I stared down at my hands, and a reflection of my white eyes shone upon them. I sound just like him. I lowered my stance as tears filled my eyes. The scientist was speechless as to my condition. My wings were glowing a golden orange in each crevice. The feathers were dark crimson and scarlet. Two large horns lay on the joints of my wings. The crevices stopped their glow as soon as I bent down on my knees and wept as to what I've become. Each ledge and platform fell and splashed lava onto the walls, but they did not melt. The smoke screen lifted and revealed myself to the scientists who were waiting. Immediately, they lifted up their pencils and scribbled furiously. At this point, I didn't care. I only wanted someone to be there when I cried. The scientists left, so I had no one to fulfill that role. I only had myself. I had to calm myself down. I had to comfort myself. Finally, Herobrine was called. He sighed and sat next to me, putting his hand on my shoulder. He, exam- he examined my wings and touched them. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. You're going to be of great use to me, Vallory. My heart hurt when he said these words. My fist hit the netherrack ground, cracking it. My empty white eyes were fixed on him. I could hardly contain my emotions. Tears fell down my cheeks, turned into scarlet, orange, and golden liquid. I was bleeding through my eyes. I took action, charging from my position, and back-kicked Herobrine to the wall, pinning him against it. What is my purpose? Untamed anger flew through my veins. Surprisingly, Herobrine laughed wickedly. Yes, feel that rage flowing through you. You were made to be a killing machine, Vallory. Your future is to help us win this nether battle against the pitiful humans in the overworld. Your power will grant us a huge advantage. My nails, talons almost, dug into his arms, making them bleed. And what if it doesn't work? What if I'm not powerful enough? He raised a single eyebrow. You doubt your own skills? I paused before answering, and released him. No, I doubt my will. I turned and heard him sigh. No one ever said that you wanted to. My eyes widened. These people are insane. They really want to use me as a weapon for their stupid battle. How powerful are these humans anyway? I heard his breath behind me and spun around, fear in my eyes. This was it. This was my future, sealed on a burnt wall. As soon as I spun around, he had knocked me down. My head hit the molten floor as a ring formed in my ears. No, you're stronger than this. You will not go down without a fight. I forced myself up, charging and punching Herobrine in the stomach, then clamping my hands together and striking him on the back of the head. My heart raced as he hit the floor. All at once, he got down on the floor and tripped me from under my feet, pinning me to the floor. I stared into his blank eyes, but felt his hand on my face. Lightning shot from his palm into my face. Agonizing screams turned into inhuman screeches. His lightning scarred my face and shot into my mouth, nose, eyes, and ears, electrocuting me from the inside out. My screams raised their pitch as if my voice box was charging up. Glass from the viewing window shattered and flew everywhere, stabbing Herobrine in the side, and one glass shard managed to fly into my eye once Herobrine let go. Lava-like blood poured from my left eye, sending pain searing through my face and into my body once again. I couldn't see through my left eye, so I ran, half blind, out of the cell. The scientists fled immediately because of the glass. I didn't get very far before I felt lightning hug my ankles and trip me, turning into shackles and dragging me back. I felt the lightning run up my wrists and form shackles around them as well. They dragged me back to Herobrine. Even if I took flight and tried to struggle out of his grip, he just dragged me back. Using my fire magic, I formed a molten rock sword over my hand and sliced the chains in half. The lightning reformed from the chains and surrounded me, scarring my arms and legs. I fell from the air and was sent plummeting to the lab floor, out cold. The strong scent of blood and burning flesh awoke me. My head felt as if it were hit by a mace, throbbing back and forth, followed by a ringing in my ears, deafening compared to everything else. I slowly opened my eyes to find myself in chains, my hands in armored shackles so I couldn't use my powers. I noticed the chained ankles running past beyond the bars of a single cell, each escorted by armored boots, faint clang faint clanking was heard barely above the ambient ring. I tried to sit up, but bruises and scars resisted my movement. Throughout this pain and darkness, I somehow felt comforted. I stared up to see a girl about my age. She had the same golden hair as me, but she had eyes like the water of a coral reef. I felt her hand on my shoulder and saw her mouth moving, but I couldn't hear a thing. Slowly the ringing ceased, and I could hear her voice, an awful lot like mine, call out to me. "Hey, don't move too much. You're hurt badly." Sighing, I laid my hand onto my stomach, breathing heavily. Where am I? I closed my eyes and heard her faint gasp as I noted our voices were the same tone and pitch. Our faces were the same shape and our hair the same color. Weakly, I stretched out my arm and faced my palms towards her. "Move my right black gauntlet." Confused, she obeyed and moved the gauntlet, showing a small tattoo with 3 crescent moons shaped figures touching each other with in a series of circles intertwined in the patterns with the crescents. Her handcuffed wrists moved to her face as she was covering her mouth in awe. That tattoo, it's... I chuckled faintly and interrupted. The symbol of a Zorakian. I almost felt tears fall upon my face as I smiled. After all these years, it's good to feel your presence again, sister. I let out a weak chuckle, but it was interrupted by pain and coughing. I managed to cough up blood in the process. "Vallory, you're injured. You need to rest up if you want to survive these fights." Violet put her hand on my shoulder as a tear fell down her face. Pain is an old friend of mine. I started looking around. The nether brick walls stretched high above the ceiling of our cell. I managed to notice Violet's shaking breath and her black cloak hanging over her head, which was torn. She had a few scars and healing bruises on her arms. I could see the fear in her eyes as to how I've changed. She sat at least a foot away from me, seeing as my wings stretched out that long and turned to be several feet long, above and below me. I faintly heard cheering outside and the clash of swords and shields. Hesitating no more, I continued. "Violet." She nodded towards me and sat patiently, both of her hands clasped together. "Have you ever had daddy issues?" She turned her head away as if I said something wrong. "I can't say that I have, but I've had mommy issues before." Breathing heavily, I managed to sit up next to Violet, ignoring the pain that followed. I lifted up my arms and showed my steel-encased hands. I would hug you, but as you can see, I can't exactly do that right now. I smiled timidly as she grabbed both of my steel cuffs and stared straight into my eyes. "We will get out of this, both of us." But I noticed that every 2 people who go into that arena, only 1 comes out. That scares me. I don't want to die, Vallory. Tears formed her eyes as she choked out the last part. She rested her head on my shoulder and wept. These fights she was talking about were in the arena of legends. Any person who dares challenge the champion, aka legend, will die in the arena. But any person who kills the legend automatically replaces the role of the legend. Sometimes breaks are formed in between fights and 2 separate challengers will fight to the death. In this case, it might be one of us or whoever gets to be called legend. Or dies. I sighed, knowing that the outcome of this might end up in one or both of us dying. Before I had any chance to speak, a voice barely called out above the cheering crowd. "The legend has called a break. In this turn of events, there will be another fight, in which the fighters will be called shortly." Violet lifted her head up to hear, as I thought, long and hard. "Violet, whatever happens out there, if we end up fighting each other, though it pains me to say. Just go ahead and kill me." I couldn't say anything else before she interrupted. "No, don't say that. I don't want to think about it. You will not die by my hands. I wouldn't live with myself if that be the case. We'll figure out a way to survive this." A tear crept down my cheek as I measured up the pros and cons. "There is no way to escape this, Violet. We have to accept our fates and fight a fair battle. Who knows what could happen to us if we team up against them?" I let my head down as tears streamed down my face. The clank of her chains left me knowing that she stood up. I felt her hands lift up my face as she stooped over me. "No, we will get through this. We will make it out alive, no matter what the cost, no matter what the consequences of our actions. We will survive. Don't you give up on me just yet, Vallory Vixen." My brows furrowed as a few strands of my golden hair fell in front of my face. She wiped the tears from my face along with her own. I looked down for a moment, thinking, she is all the family I have left. I might as well fight for her sake instead of my own. I forced my back against the wall and struggled to get up. Finally, I was on my feet. Violet and I stood face to face as she grabbed my steel-covered hand. I smiled and started as we felt each other's presence form together. "Whatever happens out there, we do it together, not as sibling rivalry, but as the strength of family." We both nodded and continued. "We will be a legend as one." "So, what plan did you have in mind then?" I asked. Violet broke her confident vibes by commenting, I was going to ask you the same thing, since you know so much about these fights." Letting my shackled hands down, I thought hard about it, and then realized I'm overanalyzing here. I can't think of anything. Violet, who knew little about these fights, scratched her scars, trying to focus. Wait a minute. We're thinking about this all wrong. We just need to kill the source of this problem. Herobrine. I stared off into space as she continued. "If we can use our powers together to make steam and blind him, we could take him out together and—" I lost it. She knew too little, and that frustrated me, no matter what idea she came up with. It would be a lost cause, considering what happened to us. Or what could happen to us. One cannot simply kill Herobrine. Believe me, I tried. So many freaking times I tried. Being his own adopted daughter, I should know. My eyes revealed the truth. I was angry, my vision was hazy, and my fists were clenched within the unbreakable cuffs. Pain seared through my chest as I heaved out a sigh. I closed my eyes and stared down, falling to my knees and apologizing quickly. "I'm so sorry. My actions were unnecessary. I will never do that again, I promise. Please don't hurt me." Silently, she stooped over me, staring at me in disbelief. Tears streamed down my cheeks. "There's no need to apologize, Val. You lashed out because you were simply frustrated. I'm not going to hurt you. If it makes you feel better, though, I forgive you." Amazed by such courtesy, I wiped my cheeks of the tears that soaked them and looked up in awe. Violet helped me on my feet again, as her confused expression turned into a warm smile, almost like Herobrine's. Before either one of us could speak, the voice finally called out to the bustling crowd. "I informed the fighters and attenders to this fight to get prepared. In this fight we have Violet Vixen versus Vallory Vixen." Our eyes locked. We couldn't believe what we heard. This is it. Well, if we end up not having a plan, I will leave you with parting knowledge. She lifted the black cloak from her head and out stood two fluffy wolf ears. "You're a werewolf?" She nodded. I almost unlocked these, and my strength was doubled. Vallory, you have this quirk as well. You just need to focus on what matters to you the most. Let it drive you, and let that alone double your strength. You will know. I shed a single tear when we were forced out of the cell by two zombie pigmen. Violet looked back as she was being pushed away to get prepared at the other end of the arena. I blocked out the pigmen's grunting and watched as one of them took off the cuffs, allowing me to finally use my powers. My hands were shaking and my fingers were cold. Leather fingerless gloves and two red gauntlets were strapped to my forearms and wrists. My black wrist warmer was moved to my right upper arm. Two leg guards were strapped to my legs as I was slipping my feet into two black boots. I stared at the board of weapons at my side and raised my hand to pick the katana, but hesitated. I chose no weapon, as I could make my own. Then I cupped my hands, creating two fiery long broadswords known as the Zwei Reapers. I held onto them with one hand and realized as I swept the hair out of my face. My eye is not injured. Wasn't I half blind until I got knocked out? Weird. Finally, the crowd cheered as the doors were opened. On the other side of the arena stood Violet. A tear crawled down her cheek as I handled the two swords, and we were pushed out into the arena. A loud bell was heard, and everything was blurred by tears. Heart beating, feet racing, swords scratching against the rough nether brick floor, crowds jeering, tears blinding, true forms revealing. This is just the beginning. I couldn't, no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't accept the fact that I had to kill her or be killed by her. Kill or be killed. But wait a minute. I'm part Phoenix. Does that mean it has to? If it doesn't, I might as well accept the fate I have. Violet would be doing the right thing by killing me. As we raced to each other from each end, I stopped in my tracks and dropped my swords, which disappeared into sparks as they fell out of my hands. Violet stopped as I did. I could see the fear and despair in her eyes as she stopped as well. The crowd jeered and booed at us. Suddenly I could hear Violet's voice speaking to me, but her lips weren't moving. Vallory, just kill me. You know as well as I do that I don't belong here. I couldn't stand for this. Violet, no. I'm not going to stand killing you. Listen up. We only have a few seconds before Herobrine knows what's up. I suggest you listen carefully. My swords reappeared in my hands after a few seconds as I charged at Violet. Violet's hair swept in front of her face as I felt anger induce me. I cried with all of my might. You should have been there for me, Violet. Just then, Violet gripped her sword and stood her ground as I let the rage flow out of me. I suffered through so much pain, and where were you? Off playing fetch with your mom. Feet turned into inches, then feet again. We swept past each other as I paused. Lava-like fluid poured out of my side. I groaned and turned. My swords flew. The carbon dioxide filled the air. Violet faced me as her brows furrowed and twitched. Her steel katana sliced through me once again. I stumbled and fell beneath her. My face hit the floor and left a ringing in my ears. Yet again, a ring deafened all of the cheering from the crowds. I was slow to get up because I knew the cold jaws of death were awaiting me. I heard another voice in my head, almost like mine. I thought it was Violet's, but Violet wouldn't talk this way. What are you doing? Get up. Kill everyone in your path. You're stronger than this. I heard the voice get deeper and more robotic. Your future depends on it. Your future to become the most powerful being in existence. These weren't my thoughts anymore. Someone was telling me to kill Violet. I got to my feet, racing and leaping from the ground. I saw Violet's fearful face one last time before she stabbed me straight through the heart. My vision was blurred, but not by tears. It was getting dark. It was cold. I couldn't hear my own heartbeat, or my sister's. I couldn't move. I couldn't see. I couldn't feel a thing. All I could hear was the voice saying, "Well done. You just got yourself killed. What were you thinking? Not even trying to hit her. You moron. I could have easily sliced your head off if you'd just let me. But no, you just had to go and get yourself killed. Weak, pathetic." She did the right thing, and I'm glad. My only hope is that she could live without me, but how could I still think? Was I not fully dead? What was this? Finally, a drum's rhythm started in my head, 2 beats quickening. It took me a while to realize it was my heart. My heart had started again. I could open my eyes again, feel, hear, see, sense. I opened my eyes to see golden magic everywhere around me. Was this heaven? No. The golden magic surrounded me as I looked around. Fiery rings surrounded my wings and flew out to greet the golden rays. I vaguely noticed my sister knelt down on the nether brick ground, gawking at me. Tears glistened on her cheeks. My feet landed on the ground as the golden and fiery rings disappeared. The crowds were in awe. Herobrine was smirking. "I'm alive?" I knew it. Part Phoenix. I'm immortal. Once again, the voice rang in my head. "Fool. You didn't know. You're immortal, so kill her already. She left you. She never once tried to find you. So if you won't kill her, I will." Suddenly, pain started searing through my head. I ran my fingers through my hair as I held my throbbing head. I felt my veins burn again as the same pain was reoccurring throughout my body. This time I felt my vision get hazy. My eyes were glowing brightly. I couldn't control myself. I formed the Zwei Reapers in each hand again. As I stared down at my hands, they were glitching, like Herobrine. My feet started into a run. I couldn't get them to stop. My hands started to raise the sword as I tried to make it stop. I was headed straight for Violet. As for her, Violet stood up again, raising her katanas in defense. Her voice rang through my head. "Vallory, what are you doing? I thought you were dead. How did you survive?" I tried talking back to her. "Violet, help. Can't control someone possessing. Run. Now!" Immediately she started sprinting towards the arena door, banging on it as my body approached her. I couldn't stop it, no matter how hard I tried. She trembled in fear and turned towards me, tears flowing out of her eyes. She slid down the door and backed as far away from me as possible. One of my swords disappeared as my hand reached for Violet's neck, holding her up and throwing her across the arena. A silhouette in front of me, looking like Violet, was struggling to get on her feet as my vision was glitching out and I entered this dark version of the arena. Panicking and looking around, the glitching reappeared as my body spun around, gripping the fiery sword and slicing through Violet's neck, decapitating her. I couldn't believe my eyes. Whatever possessed me killed my sister. My body was hovering over Violet's limp and cold. I tried to scream for the pain to stop, but no voice answered. Not a single sound came from my mouth. I could sense Herobrine's presence near me. He's here. I never felt such rage in all of my life. Then I remembered Violet, her head laden with blood. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to kill Herobrine for the pain he caused. He's the reason my sister's dead. He's the reason my planet is dead. He's the reason why I became this monster in the first place. It's his fault. His fault alone. A single bloody tear fell from my eye. My arms held my head in pain, but I didn't feel anything. In fact, I was becoming more powerful by the second. I fought the possession. It broke through. My emerald eyes broke through and were blurred. I stood in front of the corpse, speechless. Herobrine stepped down from where he sat, along with the host of the fights, stepping towards me and grabbing my wrist, holding it high in the air as I turned my eyes away from my sister into the cheering crowds. The new legend rose victorious, Vallory Vixen. The crowds burst into deafening screams of admiration and cheer. Herobrine approached me and looked me up and down, smiling deviously. My daughter will be the best weapon we have. I grimaced as fangs were shown. 2 furry lumps on either side of my head grew into ears, along with 1 lump on my backside growing into a tail. I am not your daughter, nor will I ever be. He chuckled, hearing this. We are almost bound by blood, so it's nearly impossible to not call us father and daughter. Tears crept down my face as I finally broke. Why did Violet have to die? She was my sister. His smile faded and things got serious. His eyes stared straight into my soul, sending chills down my spine. Your sister? Violet was merely an instrument of my army, a soldier. Nothing but rage swelled up inside of me. Shut up. A little, she is not. Minor, she is not. Setback. Finally, I couldn't contain myself much longer. The tears I held back finally released, and my entire life flashed before my eyes. What happened? What could have happened? All of the fresh blood, lava, and fire bended to my will, surrounding my feet little by little. Silence fell as I fell. All at once, I landed on my knees as waves of flames, lava, and blood surrounded the area. Unleashing my power, I screamed to my heart's content. They changed each into inhuman screeches. The call of a phoenix. The waves targeted every single entity in and near the arena besides me, tearing apart the building piece by piece and crushing the skeletons, breaking the ground apart and pulling in each pigman, squishing them, including the host. The cracking nether bricks moved towards Herobrine, releasing giant magma spikes one by one, cornering him. He summoned lightning to break the magma spikes, but they only channeled their power to me, powering me as one large spike pierced him through the heart. My waves of blazing flames burned in every single heart which stood in the way of my wrath. Herobrine, power drained, disappeared with a glitch. Finally, I was left in that arena, alone. No one comforted me, in front of my sister's corpse, weeping. Silence fell at last. The hellfire and rubble all around were the only things to comfort me as I sat by my sister's side. No tears left to cry. Doing what should be done, I stood up, as a grieving sigh left my mouth. I punched the ground open, and up appeared a heated stone in which there were crevices engraved into it. I spawned heated coals and used the clothing off of some pigmen to use as tinder. I bent over Violet's body, picking it up along with her head, setting them on the stone. I paused and thought of all of the times we could have had together if she had only gotten out of the fight alive. It's all in the past now. You've got to move on, Val. I grabbed a bag laying on the side of the arena, emptied it of daggers and knives, and packed some of the armor in it, including the fingerless gauntlets, a breast-sized chestplate, and a piece of the armor which looked like a phoenix. So I burned the piece and shaped it to look like a silver phoenix. Then, heaving the bag over my shoulder, I snapped my fingers, and the coals lit aflame, burning the body and letting the blood flow into each crevice of the stone as I left the arena. Pillars and walls were crumbling. Not one person was around, not even a single pigman. Though throughout the rumbling and crashing I heard something sounding vaguely like magic. I wandered around the blazing ruins, listening intently to where the magical sound was heard. Stumbling across a collapsing portal, I realized that I'd made a big mistake. The words above the portal wall read, "The portal of 1,000,000 lives. All who enter receive the curse of living multiple lives in different dimensions, looping forever." I barely read it before realizing that the gravitational pull was too strong and pulling me in. I did my best to run from it, but it was successful in dragging me into it. I had the curse of a million lives. My vision was blurred as bright colors flew by my eyes, blinding them. Oh my gosh. Ambient sounds of a portal deafened my ears for naught but a minute. I couldn't talk. I couldn't see. I couldn't hear or smell, even breathe. All at once, I felt a sharp pain in my bones. They were weak. I felt pain on my stomach and a cold touch of metal. Large hands grabbed me, as I couldn't understand what was going on. I cried, feeling plastic tubes go up my nose, forcing oxygen into them. Eventually, soft and pungent cloth surrounded me, and I was held in weak but gentle arms. I opened my eyes and saw a mother. Everything was clearer. I was in another dimension, and I was reborn. The end. Oh gosh, my voice hurts now. Okay. And dark. Why is it so laggy? But yeah, that was the backstory. My voice is almost gone. Hi, Mom. Yeah, hang on. Okay, so this this was the backstory. And oh yeah. So there's a challenge for you guys. Whoever finds the hidden meaning to this entire story will get a shout out in the next video whenever that is. Okay. And is there nope. Hang on. Sorry. There we go. Okay, bye. Oh, come on. Bye, guys.